Great. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We're 54 strong. This is the researcher-facing track discussion. Today, we are going to discuss highlights from Boston PEARC22. With that, CARC had a heavy presence at PEARC this year. We had on Sunday the RCD Nexus Day. I'll go ahead and I'll put a link to that webpage. That's a new initiative within CARC. And Anita will talk about one of the three pieces of that day. We had the student and staff workforce development that took place, and also RCD capabilities model, kind of looking to the future of the capabilities model, what's going to be happening there was part of that day. We also on Monday ran a workshop for building and selling a strategic plan. That was well attended. We had some, a CARC Research Computing Consortium where we talked about our programs there as well. And then we had a few papers that were submitted, and understanding factors that influence the research computing and data centers. Gladys will cover that in her talk. And with that, I'm rushing through that because I just want to make sure we're giving enough time at the end for all of us to kind of pipe in on our experiences and then give people resources that couldn't attend to that. So with that, I want to hand over to Anita. Thank you, Anita, for being here.
Oh, thanks for the invitation, Justin.
And Anita, if you would like me to stop sharing, I can do that. I can leave this page up, however you would like to work.
I think it's fine just to leave this up so that you can then move on to the other slides.
Great.
I didn't add anything to the slides that Justin started, but I figured I would just talk a bit here. As Justin mentioned, I'm going to focus on the Nexus Day and in particular, the student workforce development track that I participated in and helped lead along with Betsy. And I just went a mind blank from Northwestern. Betsy Hillary from Northwestern. And as Justin mentioned, there were about 70 plus at the Nexus Day, and we broke into 3 different tracks for a lot of the time in that workshop. And one of the tracks, we had about 20 participating in the student workforce development. And we were using this as a working meeting to get input on what people wanted to learn about student programs. So we did do a couple introductions, both at the student program at Utah and another for the student program at Northwestern, as well as Deb McCaffrey also talked about making a transition from being a student RCD person into a full-time facilitator. And so that was great to set a background for this. But as I said, it was mostly a working group and talking about, who had existing programs. And for those that were interested in developing programs, what could CARC and the Nexus Project portion of CARC provide in order to help those that were interested in developing student programs. And so we broke into multiple groups within our subgroup and let people talk amongst themselves. And then we gathered together and gathered together the common themes that came up. And part of this were, I think there were 3 main things that we came up with. One was the need to identify existing programs and provide information on these programs to the greater community. We talked about presenting case studies, blueprints of successful programs that could be used by others to build their own. And in that lead, we started developing, thanks to Scott Coughlin from Northwestern, a survey that we hope to polish up and circulate within the community on who has existing student programs. And if you do, tell us a little bit about the program. And we did this in 2 forms because and some of these we're going to want to get levels of details that maybe go beyond a survey. But we started to have a form that has a short survey and then more detailed questions. So that was one. The need to, as I said, identify existing programs and gather information about them. The second topic was that was identified as something to follow up on was, how do we provide resources to train the mentors for the students? And I think, if I'm recalling correctly, this was a topic that was also discussed in the staff workforce, one of the other breakout groups in the Nexus Day, the staff workforce development. So hopefully we can join together and talk about resources for mentoring in general, whether they're for the students or the full-time staff. And then the third point that we identified for moving forward is talking about how you can, the funding models, and we included this as a broad category, both the funding models for existing programs, how do we get stakeholders to buy in to establishing a student program, and how do we make our program sustainable? And I think that again will be a common theme through a lot of what we were talking about. So we came away from the meeting with a set of to-dos. I will add that right before the PEARC meeting, we did add a new page to the CaRC website under the working groups and interest groups for the staff and student workforce development interest group, which has been meeting off and on since early this year, if I'm remembering my dates right. I started attending them a few months ago. So we're going to use that as a template where we're going to provide some information from the outcomes and the outcomes from the Nexus Day meeting. So I think with that, I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions.
You know,
Actually, Anita, I have a question. Sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, this is Annalee from UCLA. Was Nexus Day focused on workforce development?
There were 3 separate tracks, if you will. 2 of them were workforce development, the staff and the student, and the others was focused more on the capabilities model, I believe.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do. I see Patrick is here. Patrick, feel free to pipe in. Patrick, you were facilitating the discussion around the RCD capabilities model.
Right, and I don't want to take away too much time, but basically we're exploring the next, an additional version or an additional way of using the model that's a little bit less of a deep dive than the current one, especially for emerging programs and smaller institutions for whom the current capabilities model is kind of a lot.
Right. And Patrick, did you walk away feeling energized that you guys had a good path for where to go next with RCD?
I think so. I mean, we've been running focus groups throughout the spring. John Hicks and Farouk Armani have been driving a lot of that stuff. And, we're getting a lot of input from a lot of different folks. And I don't want to spend too much time on it because I want to make sure Anita's got time to talk about what she's here to talk about, but I'm happy to chat about that at some point.
Yeah, well, and you're here for the call. Thanks. And if people have questions, we'll have the second half of this to drive at that. Thanks, Patrick. And yes, and we were in Boston, so it was great to be together and in person for that conversation. And the space that was used for that had 3 dividing rooms, and we were able to open and close these big bay doors based on how we were all interacting, and then each group could focus and then come back out. So it was a nice space for that. And we were at capacity. There was quite a few people there, so that was good. Anita, did you have anything else that you wanted to cover on that front? You're good.
I think I'm good.
And there was a larger conversation that Betsy was part of, because she talked about what they were doing at Purdue for their student workforce development. They have a pretty they have a program they've been running for a while, so it's mature, that they've been doing for a while. And Anita, I know that you do the same thing at Utah, right? So you spend a lot of time with that.
Correct. Yeah. Both Betsy and I think I said Northwestern, not Purdue. Sorry for that. I actually have in my notes at Purdue. Yeah.
Big
So,
10, it's okay.
So yes, both Betsy and I, both at this Nexus, the breakout for the student workforce, we did present a 5-minute blurb on what we were doing, highlights of our program. And yes, Betsy did also lead a panel that I was part of, along with Drew from Texas A&M and Ashley from Oak Ridge and Laura from Purdue.
Okay.
And somebody from Northwestern, Elpier from Northwestern.
Right.
So yeah, there was another panel on as part of the PEARC program, highlighting the student programs that existed and different features of them, and selling them to the stakeholders and so forth.
Right. Great. Thank you very much, Anita. So with that, I mean, Boston was 4 or 5 days of lots of different things going on. I will encourage you to go into that call document that Gladys has posted in the chat. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see the conference proceedings link to check that out, so that you can, as we're talking and people are bringing and referencing those different things up, you can get access to those abstracts through that link. You could do a search on the topic right at the top and pull up the abstract, okay, as we're moving forward. So
an important note on that, ACM has made all the content available for something like 90 days, and then it'll go behind their typical membership wall. So
okay.
Everybody can get access to it for a little while.
Even another reason to jump on that right now. Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, so when we look at the breakdown, there was 3 different tracks that were going on. There was the workforce track, there was a systems track, an applications track at the conference that you could grab from. There were workshops like CARC was running. There were posters, presentations, and paper presentations. There were exhibitors that were in the hallway. One thing that I helped do reviews on was the Interact. I posted the winners of the Interact competition for the interactive websites in that call document as well. That was interesting. There were the keynote speakers. We had the Dean of Engineering as the keynote speaker from the Ohio State University. A roboticist was there, so that was a great conversation. And with that, with all of the different things going on, I'm hoping that the community today on the call can pipe in on some of these categories. But before we do that, I wanted to hand off to Gladys and talk through the workforce development track and training and what that was all about, how you got involved. Gladys, would be great to hear that and some of the highlights.
Thank you, Justin. Hi, everyone. My name is Gladys Andino. I am with the University of Virginia. I am a little bit in down the hillside, feeling a little bit sick today, but we're going to push through this one because I didn't want to miss this part. I was the co-chair of the workforce development training and diversity track at PEARC for this PEARC22. I was also able to participate in PEARC21. And this is just one of my favorite tracks, and PEARC is absolutely one of my favorite conference, right? And it's because of the people. And I think that the fact that also that it's a smaller right? It's not something like a C, so allows me the opportunity to talk to my peers and colleagues and interact with the students. So by far, it's one of my favorite conferences. And I absolutely enjoy the work that we did with the workforce track. Just to give you a little bit of, the highlights, we had a total of 17 papers presented in a period of 2 days. That was Tuesday through Wednesday. We had a total of, I think that the numbers that are not correct. There is actually 11 papers that were short papers and 6 papers that were full papers. That's how it goes. And of course, I am really excited to see that Patrick is here and it's also Shafak, because the next thing that I want to talk about is the best full paper for the workforce track. That was also received the Phil Andrews Award. And that was the paper about understanding the factors that influence research computing and data careers. And it was just an exciting paper to have. The discussions that went around that paper. We had a full house during the presentation of the paper. And it was just, we didn't want to stop the conversation, right? But we had other papers in line that needed to be presented too. And we had to cut, the time to a point, but it was just a great conversation going on. And I want to give the opportunity, since I see Shafak here and Patrick, just to give them the opportunity to mention things about the paper. I was planning on sharing the PDF too with the community so that you can have access. It's really an excellent read to go. But basically, I think that this paper was based in over 200 respondents from different institutions across the United States that the data was collected from. And there were some key questions that were asked to the community regarding the research computing and data career. And one of them was actually really interesting. What is that? The question about what advancement means across the career stages in the RCD community, right? So what that looks like for the different areas of expertise, I guess. And in the paper, they highlighted, right, being recognized for the expertise and the impact that you have in your field in your area of interest or field of work is one of the big of the top 3 that were important for the community. The increasing of the salary or benefits, and also having a greater influence in the organizational or the organizational strategy were at the top 3 of what people would define as an advancement in a field of the RCD. And I don't want to push the paper because I know that the authors are here, and I would love to hear from Patrick and from Shafak. But I'm just telling you from my perspective what I received from that conversation. It was really also exciting to see that they were looking at the factors that motivate, like the changes or the motivations and job changes in the different RCD facing, right? And so what the different groups or different peoples are looking when it comes to what motivates you to start looking for a job in that area, right? And having the opportunity to have a more meaningful contribution is one definitely of the top 3, right? And that is, for me, I can absolutely relate to that. And that's what I look in this field, right? I want to have meaningful contributions in what I do and the people that I help with. Also having the opportunity for professional skills development, right? We all, we want to be in pursuing a better ourselves in every way that we can. And that's one of my goals, right? I always try to be looking for how can I, grow my skill set, my skill set, whether it is, professional development or technical skills, right? I want to be moving ahead. And I think that the third one of those top 3 were the opportunity to join an organization that embraces innovation, cutting-edge tools, and technology services. The next other question, what I remember that was asked, through that paper was, let me see if I can find my notes here. The role of gender in the RCD profession, right? And that was really interesting because the way how, men and women see, their roles or the things they're looking for is very different. And I think that when they were looking at women versus men, I think that for women, looking at the, the technical skills, the interpersonal communications and related skills, experience and understanding of academic research project were actually in the top 3. And for men was, I think that they were slightly similar, I think. I think that Patrick will have to help me out here to be able to give you the right information. But
Shafak's really the expert on that whole section of the analysis. She really dove into a lot of that. The only comment I was going to make is when you were talking about salary, there was an interesting distinction that when people thought about what constitutes advancement, salary was in the top 3. When they talked about what would motivate them to make a job switch, salary moved down to number 6. So people have the perception that salary is important, but it's not actually as much of a motivator as many of the things that you mentioned around professional development and a meaningful contribution and respect, frankly.
And I absolutely agree. And I know that the perspectives, might change across careers, right? Like whether you are an early career or you are a mid-career person, right? The way how you establish yourself in a community and, piece, right, that might change. But, I think that when I saw the presentation, I could so much relate to, like, you are just exactly right on point, right? That's the point, in my career, what are the things that are really important for me if I'm going to make a move or a change, or thinking about the new skills that I want to develop. And I absolutely enjoy, that's was really a great reason why this paper was not just the best full paper for the track, but also received the Phil Andrews Award. And I just want to say again, Patrick and Shafak and the other authors of the paper, congratulations, really well done job. Well,
thank you. And I think it's an important companion piece to the paper that came out that looked at the demographics of our community, that was produced by the RCD Professionalization Working Group, which was also a really important paper. And we spent a lot of time talking back and forth on the surveys, and I think going forward we're going to try to coordinate our survey so that we can better connect some of the great demographic information that they were exploring with some of the stuff that we're doing around the career arcs decisions. So next, did you want to add anything?
Well, I think that, you guys have covered pretty much. What I would like to just say is that, we are doing the next phase of this work, and we will be doing some interviews and trying to create some personas, and we are looking for involvement from the community, right? So if you would like us to interview you, or you know someone whose career story is interesting, they took some interesting turns in their career path, please reach out to us and inform us that we should reach out to them for interviews, because I think that sharing people's stories is really important. People want to see where are they going in this field, how they can get there, and what are some of the critical factors that people should be thinking about on their career journeys. So I just want to share what the email is. If anyone would like to volunteer for being interviewed, or for giving us names for others to be interviewed. So I'm just sharing that. Thank you.
Okay, so just to continue a little bit, like I mentioned, we had a total of 17 papers across 2 days. We also had a best full paper, the student best paper too, under the workforce track, and that was let me look at my notes here. The paper was the exchanging best practices for supporting computational and data intensive research, the ESPEC network. And the focus of this paper was basically focusing on the practices that that differ from those in general software engineering context, right? It was really like focus, like a student focus oriented. And I will invite everyone, if you have access to ACN, just to go and give a quick dive into those papers. They were really well done, really well presented. It was a rich, amount of material that was presented during the 2 days. We also had another one of the papers, from this community, the CARC community, that was presented there too, and it was the paper by characterizing the U.S. research computing in data workforce. And I think it's my understanding that that paper presented the results of 563 professionals that were surveyed, right? And a lot of the information went by the demographics and the educational backgrounds of every person that was actually surveyed. Let me see what else we have here. I think that we have also in the, I was able to participate, I always do this during PEARC, is participating in the reviewing of the posters, right? And I try to do a lot of the work with the mentoring with the students. And I think that Jeff is here. He was the award winner of the best poster. And it was the poster talking about the hypershell, the distributed task execution for HPC. Jeff, if you're still in the call, if you would like to mention, and do some of the highlights of your poster, we would really appreciate it. And one of the students' best posters that we have there too, which was a really interesting conversation to have with Jenny there, it was the comparative evaluation of hate speech models and racial biases. And that poster basically was talking about, when about evaluating the different quote unquote standard evaluators for hate speech, right? And how there are some biases even with those called standard evaluators, right? And I would really recommend you to also take a quick read of that poster. It was really a great conversation there. Is Jeff still here?
Yep,
Yeah,
I'm still here. I just didn't want to interrupt you.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff. If you'd like to talk a little bit about your poster, would be great.
Sure. I mean, I don't want to take up too much time. I'm happy to chat more later on. I think it was said that, the latter half of this would be occupied by PEARC talk, but yeah, the poster had to do with some workflow automation software we developed at Purdue a couple of years back, and we've since, revamped it from the ground up, and it just helps a lot of the newer sort of computational workflows that people run, not traditional big simulation-based stuff, but in a lot of researchers these days want to run like bioinformatics tasks or machine learning tasks or some kind of data processing, and there could be hundreds of thousands or millions of these that are all independent from each other. And the question is, how do you get, especially for researchers that are less proficient in the more technical bits on a computing cluster, how do you sort of make it easy to scale that out, to 100 compute nodes? And so that's what hypershell does. It's a very easy to use ergonomic tool and it's very flexible for scaling out that kind of workflow automation.
Great.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for that. And Justin also asked me, how did I got involved in, this is something that I have been doing for a couple of years. I got involved with PEARC and, different settings, going from participating and volunteering myself to be part of the review panel, right? You can go ahead and choose, whatever area of expertise you feel like you can provide some of the help, right? And participate that way. Later on, I had the opportunity to be chair of, a different assistant track. And for the last 2 years, I participated with the workforce just because it's my area of interest, and I am so passionate about this part of, the workforce development within this community. And all goes about, just making yourself available and making the time to be able to participate and talking to the right people and just offering your help, right? It requires, there are some time commitments that you have to definitely make sure you make time for it, right? And it's a community effort. I think that I so much enjoyed it working with the technical program committee this year, right? I had to mention that I didn't do this job alone. I did it with my co-chair, Veronica Fillinger, and from the UK. She was able to participate and help me out. And be present at Boston. So it was just a great time to have conversations with our colleagues, and you know, we both were passionate about this track, and I think that things went well. The amount of papers that we have and the quality of the papers, we were really very satisfied, and the committee, the review committee that we had that participated through the whole process was just delightful and excellent to collaborate with them. And so if you have the time, if you feel like you want to participate, PEARC22 most likely it's going to be doing, you know, a call for participation or call for, you know, volunteering to be part of the conference. And I recommend you don't hesitate. If you can make some of the time, it's really worth it. And it's a lot of, you know, personal reward that comes from satisfaction of participating in something like that. So I will encourage everyone to, you know, take the opportunity to do so. And with that, Justin, that's all that I have. And
yeah, thank you, Gladys.
having me.
Yeah, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Annalie. We've got a few questions we thought we would be.
Yeah.
finished. Go ahead.
Do we need to show the Jamboard, or is that just for offline?
Yeah, I
Is-
mean,
yeah.
people can go ahead and
Yeah.
pop things in there if that's helpful.
Okay.
I think the jury's still out if Jamboard is how people like to
Yeah.
operate or not, but
Well, those who are Jamboard, have an affinity for Jamboard, please drop any thoughts you have in there. Yeah, I'm just wanted to reach out now and draw out any others of you. Maybe we can start with any others who may have attended PEARC. Do you have it? Was there anything that stood out for you? Was there a standout presentation, paper, or poster that you'd just like to share for a moment about? No, you know, no minimum number of words or
Right.
maximum number of words, just anything that you'd be willing to share for
Yeah.
those who might have attended.
and you can use chat, you can use the
Mhm.
Google Doc, and there is a Jamboard. So
Or anything, something new that you learned, even if it isn't specific to a paper or poster. Maybe it was a conversation you had, you know, as you walked between. All right, Ashley's sharing lots of smart folks at PEARC22. It was a great time as a first timer. That's good to know. Actually, yeah. Any other first timers besides Ashley?
I was a
Oh,
first-
okay.
Yep.
Lots of COVID as well. Oh my goodness. Okay. I guess that's good to know as well. Food for thought. How did it feel going back in person? So kind of on a related note to the COVID thing. Okay, Mark is sharing first time, better conference than SC. Please share if you can elaborate on why you felt it was better. You may not know why, that's fine. We're also interested in knowing how it felt going back in person. Were there any observations on that?
I think that it was, you know, I just want to mention a little bit that it was a little bit overwhelming at first, right? Because you had to get to adjust it to be around, you know, 500 plus people there. But it was just great. You know, once you see your colleagues, it's just like, there is so much to catch up, right? We see, you know, we see them often, you know, through this community and when we have different calls, but it's absolutely not the same at all. And so for me, it was at first, you know, overwhelming. And of course, you know, the concerns of COVID around and all that, you know, it's always a concern. But it was, for me, it was just absolutely fantastic to be able to see people in person, right? I did enjoy that very much. And I do agree, you know, with the sense of, I like this conference a lot. It's one of my favorite, but it's because of the community. It's a smaller community, so that the chances to talk to people and have meaningful conversations, you know, is you have more opportunities to do that than when you are around 10,000, right?
Right. So SC is around 10,000. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's, yes, I probably bigger than that, you know, and that was a small number.
Yeah.
Oh, Lauren's got her.
Lauren, yeah.
Hey, I have comments on this in particular. I also really valued the in-person experience. I have no regrets about going. It was so great to reconnect with people I'd met, meet people I hadn't met before, partially just by being in vicinity and introductions. It truly does have its own important value. But I do think that going forward, I would really love for the community that makes PEARC happen to include virtual participation as well, even knowing that it's just a different type of thing than in person. And I, you know, even though I don't regret going, I had I known more about the current variants and had I known how few people would be masking in some very crowded situations, I probably wouldn't have gone. I ended up getting COVID myself, even though I was somebody who was probably taking more precautions than 95% of the people there. Others here can vouch for me on whether that's true or not. But I was kind of disappointed, right? It's a scientific conference. To some extent, I thought people would mask more. This is my own personal opinion, and I don't want to get too, I don't know, fired up about it or anything. But just with the new variants, because the vaccines don't cover them so well, having a vaccine requirement really just wasn't enough. And I think we're going to continue to see that in the future with conferences where we either have to require masking in most situations and or provide testing so that people who have contagious levels of viral load, when vaccines don't apply well, can test themselves proactively and not attend if they're positive. Because by the time I had any symptoms, I was super, super positive.
Thanks, Lauren. Ashley?
Hi, Annalie. Hi, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. I guess I can share a little bit about my experience at PEARC as going for the first time. So first, I used to say it PEARC, and then Scott kept correcting me, Scott Yokel. So now I say it the right way. So I went to the RCD Nexus Day on Sunday, and then was at the conference until Thursday. Overall, it was a really great experience. I agree, like with some of what Gladys was saying. It's one of the nicest conferences I've gone to, just people-wise, and was able to talk to a lot of people who I would not have otherwise if I had not gone. And actually, like from the conference, I have 3 or 4 people who I've followed up with since then and working on trying to figure out collaborations. So I, as a young professional who's like newer in this space, and then also, so my background's in counseling, if you don't know, that's like my shtick now. Is like I was a counselor, now project manager, and now RCD. So I really didn't think I would be like at a conference about advanced research computing, and it was really exciting, and the people were great. And now there's potential collaborations coming from it. So just overall a good experience, and very appreciative of this community.
Thanks so much, Ashley. And I mean, Ashley, we need to interview you for your, your story, your RCD story. It's got to be interesting.
I emailed Patrick and Shafak already. So.
Awesome.
She's on our list now. Anybody else? And I will say, we have a preponderance of women who volunteered. We really want to hear from more men, and we'd love to hear from some non-traditional folks, people of color, to balance out some of our stories. So please do consider. We'll make it easy, and we won't be publishing anything about your details or anything like that. So
Good to know. Thank you, Patrick. Thanks so much, Ashley. All right. Is there anything on the Jamboard that we need to bring out? I don't have it open on my screen here.
I had messed up and
Okay.
had the sharing wrong, so I fixed that and I put the link.
Oh, okay, good.
Yep.
All
So
right.
there's nothing in there's a few folks in there checking it out right now. I'll keep you posted.
Awesome. Okay.
I will say, yeah. Any other thoughts? Any hands raised?
Lauren's is still raised. It might be residual.
Yeah.
Oh, yep.
It's residual.
Yeah, it was interesting navigating that mask piece. The poster presentation where the social on the Tuesday night was a full venue, lots of people, and it was really hard to drink wine with a mask on, so that had to come off, and then there was work to be done with evaluating different things. So it was this 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It was so great to see people and get a chance to talk. I will say that the exhibitors were in the atrium space, but it was really dark in that spot, so that was kind of interesting trying to navigate that. It would have been nice to have like a room where they were at, or I know it was good because you had to walk past the exhibitors to get there, but something seemed wrong with that. But can't win it all. Anybody do anything fun in Boston while you're there? I went to a baseball game. That was cool.
I was
The
able
green-
to go to the, sorry, someone else was also talking. I was able to go to the museum. One of the museums said I had no enough time to, do all that I wanted to do, but it was just, it was just a really great treat to be able to spend a few hours doing that. We absolutely enjoy it. We had the opportunity to go with Shafak and Veronica and just go and enjoy some afternoon there. And really, we found really good food too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Was it hosted by a particular institution? It was just Boston, it was
Oh, it
PEARC
was-
hosting it, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some good comments continuing on the discussion of hybrid versus not versus the risks and rewards thereof. In
Right.
person versus. Thank you for sharing those,
Yeah.
everyone.
And the travel to get there, the many airplanes for some people. Yeah. Kimberly saying the walk, Freedom Trail, getting out into the city was great.
Yeah,
Yeah, I actually came in a day early and took a long bike ride out to Lexington and Concord and went through to go see Walden Pond and just see a bunch of Massachusetts beyond Boston. It was gorgeous.
We did luck out with the weather. The weather was spot on.
was there, oh,
Oh.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna
No,
say
please.
one thing. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Kimberly. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I
Okay.
go?
Yeah, go ahead, Kimberly.
So that was my first in-person PEARC conference. I will say one thing that was a bit disappointing, is seeing as how I've only recently been more engaged with other researchers from other organizations, is one, I didn't really see too many of them. And the other was just trying to network without any kind of icebreaker. I found it very difficult to come up with conversations and topics at lunch sitting with people I didn't know. And I thought maybe, next go around, it'd be great if there was just some way to engage more. And I know it sounds, games are always thrown out there, but I think something like find someone who's from this university and, ask what they do, just something to kind of start some type of engagement. And I'm a very social person, but even I found it hard to talk to, someone who's more on the developer side and versus me being researcher facing, and I don't really know much about who they are or where they're from, and getting that information was kind of like pulling teeth sometimes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kimberly. Michael, you have your hand raised. Sorry if we've been missing you.
No, you haven't been missing me. I just broke in before, but I unfortunately was not able to go to the conference. I had a competing conference commitment that I had to be at, so I couldn't make it out there. But I don't want to make this a point for discussion, but I've been to a couple conferences before. This is the first one that I'm personally either have heard about or been involved in that's had such a COVID breakout. And I'm wondering, maybe this is the science kind of thought process in me, if anybody's actually looking at these conferences, seeing what's coming out from them, because I've been to two major events and we're hosting another one, a smaller one over at the museum in New York City next month. And have not had really come across the same level of exposure that you guys are saying. And one of them had, a daily attestation of no symptoms and things like that. The other one, there was, really you're on your honor. And varying levels of masking, probably more towards the not being masked side of it. I think it would be an interesting thing, maybe academically or scientifically, to just try to get a sense of maybe what the impact of this has been on these things. Was this a viral super spreader just by happenstance, or is this something that we're seeing coming out of a lot of these conferences? Because that may very well inform future decisions about hybrid versus virtual, which I'm a very much, you make it one or the other, because hybrid in-person versus virtual, because if you don't do that, you end up losing a great deal of people at the last second. Oh, I can just do it from home now. And I think it gets a little bit harder. One idea that I've heard about that was you have the in-person conference and then sort of the talks or the conference proceedings maybe a week or two later being posted, one for people that were there, another for people that didn't come. But it's just an interesting thing. But I'm just curious, and I don't want to start a whole discussion, so maybe this is like an outside survey of what the relative impact of COVID has been at these conferences. And Lauren, I'm glad to hear you better.
Thanks. Yeah, fully recovered now. I've got like two thoughts there because I coordinate and work with some communities of community builders who have either hosted or attended a lot of conferences, albeit within the research, computing, and data space. And I think two major things that have impacted the spread in conferences, and even what I've seen in some recent reporting about rates of COVID at conferences over the last month, the two things are in the research, computing, and data community, when we've had even close-knit workshops with breakout groups, the places that didn't have COVID outbreaks were the places where there was a mask requirement on site and a strong request for people to mask while traveling. Whereas places where no masks were included and only a vaccine requirement, that's where a lot of breakouts have happened. The second component is that the variants that are prominent right now versus Omicron are just really not covered by the vaccine. And what that means is that by the time you have symptoms, meaning an immune response, the virus has already had a chance to build up in your system and you are highly contagious. And so at PEARC, there were a ton of people walking around, and I didn't know this about those variants at the time, but a ton of people walking around, eventually myself included, who were positive likely for a full 24 hours and not positive, but contagious and highly contagious. Before they ever had any like smallest bit of symptoms. And where with Omicron and conferences earlier in the spring, people tended to have, if they were vaccinated, an immune response before they actually were, testing rapid positive so that they had any, amount of virus that made them contagious. And that's just where we are right now.
Yeah. So a lovely, brave new world that we're dealing with. I understand completely. It's not an easy problem for anybody to crack. It's more of an interesting and like I said, I've seen it both ways, and admittedly been both ways where very heavily masked and not very heavily masked. So it's a very hard thing to navigate. I do, however, think that the in-person conferences are very important. And I do think getting the community back together and not via Zoom is also very important. So I'm happy they're coming back if we can mitigate risk. Yeah. Be an interesting thing.
Well, we're down to a few minutes left here tonight or today. So if there's any last questions or comments. All right.
Also want to put in our last question was if any discussion today provoked a thought or idea for a possible future call topic.
Yes.
Please let us know. There is a place to drop that in. You can find it in the call doc, or just reach out to us and let us know. We really appreciate it because this is meant to be a community call. We don't want to be driving the topics. We want you to be driving them. So thank you for a great discussion.